Right now on KGW, the battle against the wildfires ravaging Los Angeles has entered its third day. The new arrests we're learning about as firefighters struggle to protect homes and people. Plus, the nation mourns former President Jimmy Carter. President Biden delivering the eulogy as every living president was in attendance for the funeral. And the search for an armed suspect in the Kenton neighborhood ends without a suspect in custody. And later, we are less than 24 hours away from what could be the first healthcare strike in Oregon, where doctors walk off the job. Your news at noon starts right now. We start this afternoon with a live look from Los Angeles, scenes of the incomprehensible devastation as firefighters struggle to contain 3 fires that continue to burn out of control. More than 180,000 people are still under mandatory evacuation orders, and another 200,000 are being warned that they may have to evacuate soon. In total, so far, 29,000 acres have burned. That is almost 45 square miles. Thank you for joining this afternoon. I'm China Green. We will also get an update from officials this morning. At least 20 people have been arrested for looting in the areas devastated by the fires. We learned yesterday that at least 5 people have been killed by the fires and thousands are now displaced. LA County Sheriff Robert Luna spoke to reporters this morning about the attempted lootings and how deputies and local police officers are working, but to protect what is left of people's homes and property in the wake of the fires.
Our first choice isn't to do enforcement. It's not to make arrests. It's to help people. But if people choose to commit crimes, they're going to be held accountable.
Officials are also now calling the largest of the wildfires the Palisades Fire, the most destructive wildfire in the history of Los Angeles. NBC's Jacob Soboroff takes a look at the devastation from a very personal perspective.
I grew up in Pacific Palisades, born and raised here, and I've never seen anything like this. We've had a lot of fires and even evacuated sometimes, but nothing like this. The whole town is gone as we knew it. This is the Palisades Public Library. It's still on fire. I brought my kids here. This was like the pride of the community when this thing was built. The weight of it all, I think, is very, very intense to think about.
In my 26 years, this could be one of the top, most devastating fires I've seen.
What happens in a situation like this where the high school's destroyed? You got churches destroyed. You got the 2 supermarkets in the community destroyed. How do you come back from something like this?
They come back one day at a time.
To me, Sunset Boulevard is the heart of my community. There's not a single house left standing here. What do you do? What do they do? There's just never, ever, ever been anything like this.
I mean, I know my house is gone, but I kind of just need to see it firsthand to just let it sit in. I just can't believe it.
I thought I was going to wake up this morning and it's going to be a bad dream.
This is the first time that I've seen the house that I grew up in, and I don't really know what to say. Mom, look at this.
Is that Frontera?
Yeah.
Your birth house?
Yep.
Oh, I'm so sad. Every one of you guys was born in that house.
I know, it makes me sad too. This was a really, really special place for the Soboroff family, and I'm very sorry to see it go. And I'm very sorry for all of the residents of Pacific Palisades and everyone across the greater LA area that's going through this right now. I look around the town, the neighborhood, the place that I grew up in. I talk to my friends who I spend so much time with on these streets, and it's hard to imagine what comes next and what happens next.
I can't imagine as a journalist going back to the place that I grew up and seeing pretty much only chimneys left of what I grew up in. Apparently all of his family members, his siblings were born in that house, and just to see that all wiped away within a matter of days is devastating.
You know, Chan, we were talking earlier, I think a lot of people assume when you live in the middle of a community, when you got the fire hydrant there and as he mentioned, the library there and the supermarket down the street,
you kind of think that you're safe from wildfires, right? And then when you see an entire town gone, it's just hard to put into words. I will tell you that what was the main windstorm that triggered all of that has vastly improved and in many cases simply disappeared. There are more reports than not in the flats of the valleys like the LA basin where they basically have no wind today. But there are still winds gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour coming through canyons, coming up over ridges. And some spots that even in the lowlands are still quite windy. Ontario Airport, for example, still gusting over 40 miles per hour. But when you go to the Malibu Hills, the weather sites I've been watching up in that area are basically showing no wind today. So overall, the weather has improved, but the fires continue, and there continues to be in areas enough wind to really push these fires. Now, with that said, from Mexico, not including San Diego, but all the way up through LA and then just shy of Santa Barbara, there's still a mix of fire weather warnings and high wind warnings issued through the day today into tomorrow. Where you see the brighter colors around LA, they're talking about relative humidity factors under 10% today, which just allows fires to spread that much more quickly. Again, the worst of the windstorm that produced these winds and the 100-mile-per-hour winds in some of the mountainous areas around LA County, that is thankfully over. But there's still enough wind driving these fires that the warnings continue for yet another day. That's your update for now.
Thank you, Rod. And 300 firefighters from Oregon and 146 personnel from Washington are heading to Southern California to help battle those fires. A crews from Oregon will be in LA for a minimum of 2 weeks. Meantime, 2 local organizations are raising money for fire victims. Yesterday, the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland launched its fundraising effort. And right now, the Red Cross is overseeing more than 1,200 evacuees in shelters around LA. Locally, volunteers from the Red Cross Cascades region are ready to go at a moment's notice. They say right now cash donations are critical and can make the biggest, most immediate impact on those affected by these fires. KGW will continue to monitor the very latest on the Los Angeles wildfire disaster, both on air and streaming. And be sure to download the KGW Plus app on your smart TV to stay up to date with the latest information. Today in Washington, a final farewell to President Jimmy Carter. Today's state funeral caps off days of ceremonies and memorials to honor the 39th president. And that included an opportunity for the public to say goodbye while he lied in state at the rotunda at the U.S. Capitol building. Carter died December 29th at 100 years old. NBC's Chris Malone has more during today's National Day of Mourning.
Shall I see God?
A funeral befitting a president at Washington National Cathedral. The late President Jimmy Carter remembered by his beloved family, friends, and those who worked with him in the White House decades ago. All the nation's living presidents in attendance seated side by side, showing respect for one of their own. President Biden delivering a eulogy for his longtime friend.
Jimmy Carter's friendship taught me, and through his life taught me, the strength of character is more than title or the power we hold.
Artists Trisha Yearwood and Garth Brooks paying tribute with song.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Ahead of that, mourners by the thousands came to the Capitol to pay their respects, each with his own reasons for coming.
I think President Carter and Rosalind Carter deserve all the respect that the world can muster.
They waited in line for hours in frigid temperatures just to spend a few moments with a president who touched their lives in some way.
He's definitely done a lot, as a human being and for the world.
Respect, selfless, willing to do what was right.
The day's ceremonies, steeped in tradition, capped off with one last flight home. Special Air Mission 39, taking America's 39th president to Georgia for a small private service at the church where he taught Sunday school for decades. Then, burial next to his beloved wife, Rosalind. Chris Malone, NBC News, Washington.
In developing news this afternoon, the search for an armed suspect in North Portland's Kenton neighborhood ended this morning with no suspect in custody. That search started just before 1 this morning after the suspect allegedly robbed the Mousetrap Tavern on North Lombard. Police say customers were still in the bar during the robbery, that shots were fired inside the bar, but no one was hurt. Officers arrived on scene and spotted a person matching the suspect's description, carrying a rifle through the neighborhood. That suspect then ran from police. And here's what police had to say about that suspect this morning.
This suspect is believed to be armed and dangerous. He's believed to still have the gun with him, as far as we know. An officer saw him that looked like he still had the rifle with him at the time. So that, again, increases our level of concern.
Police used drones, an airplane, armored vehicle, tactical teams, and canines during that search. While the search has ended, officials are asking anyone who may have information about the suspect to contact Portland police. Wild police story from Marysville, Washington, just north of Seattle here. What was originally a traffic stop escalated very quickly into a police shooting that ended like this. A car crashing into a Costco, burning into flames. Police say that the driver got into a fight with an officer. At some point, the officer shot the driver, who hit the gas pedal and dragged the officer with their car until it crashed and caught on fire. The driver died at the scene. The officer went to the hospital with minor injuries. A Portland man is facing child luring and sexual corruption charges. Detectives say that 33-year-old Joseph Lyons started talking to an undercover detective posing as a child during a predator sting last spring. They couldn't find him at the time, but he was indicted in November and arrested on Friday. Detectives in Washington County detectives say Lyons admitted to meeting multiple children he met online and are asking anyone with information to contact police.